Have you ever watched your own family choose a holiday dinner over you? I have. My name is Ava Mitchell, and 3 years ago, on Christmas Eve, I learned the most painful lesson of my life. Sometimes strangers care more about you than the people who raised you. I never imagined Christmas would become the day my family broke my heart forever. Growing up in Denver, Colorado, Christmas was everything to me. My mom decorated the house with sparkling lights. My dad always insisted on buying the biggest Christmas tree in the neighborhood. Every year we baked cookies together, watched Christmas movies, and laughed until midnight. At least, that's how it used to be. Everything changed after my younger brother Ethan was born. Little by little, I became invisible. If Ethan wanted something, he got it. If I needed something, I was told to wait. If Ethan made a mistake, everyone laughed. If I made one, I was called selfish. For years, I convinced myself it wasn't favoritism. I kept telling myself, they still love me. I was wrong. By the time I turned 22, I was working 2 part-time jobs while finishing nursing school. I barely slept, but I was proud because I never asked my parents for money. Then, just 4 days before Christmas, everything changed. I collapsed at work. I remember feeling dizzy. My vision blurred. Then everything went black. When I woke up, bright hospital lights were shining into my eyes. A doctor stood beside my bed. "You have a serious kidney infection," he said gently. "We need to keep you here for several days." I felt terrified. Hospitals had always scared me, but I wasn't afraid of the illness. I was afraid of being alone. I called my mom immediately. She answered after several rings. "Mom, I'm in the hospital." There was silence. Then she sighed. "Oh no. Are you okay? I'm scared. I need you." She paused. "We'll come." Hearing those words filled me with relief. For the first time that day, I smiled. 2 hours later, my parents finally arrived. Dad barely looked at me. Mom hugged me for only a second before checking her phone. "We can't stay long," Dad said. "We still have Christmas dinner to prepare." I stared at him. "I thought you'd stay with me tonight." Mom forced a smile. "You'll be fine. There are nurses here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's Christmas Eve," I whispered. "I don't want to spend it alone." Dad looked annoyed. "Ava, your grandparents, your cousins, everyone is coming. We can't cancel Christmas because you're sick." Those words hit harder than any illness. I looked from my father to my mother, hoping one of them would say they were joking. Neither did. Mom kissed my forehead. "We'll visit tomorrow." Then they walked out of my hospital room. I watched the door close, and just like that, I was alone. Outside my window, snowflakes slowly covered the city. Inside my room, the only sound was the steady beep of the heart monitor. For the first time in my life, I realized that sometimes being related by blood doesn't make someone family. Christmas morning arrived quietly. I woke up hoping, just for a second, that my parents had changed their minds. Maybe they had spent the night feeling guilty. Maybe they were already on their way. I reached for my phone. No missed calls, no text messages, nothing. I opened social media, trying to distract myself. That was my biggest mistake. The first thing I saw was my mom's Facebook post. A picture of our entire family gathered around the Christmas tree. Everyone was smiling. The caption read, "Nothing is more precious than spending Christmas with the people you love. Feeling so blessed." I stared at the screen. My hands started shaking. I wasn't in the photo. It was as if I didn't exist. A few minutes later, my cousin Lily uploaded another picture. The dining table was covered with roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, pies, cookies, and wrapped gifts. Everyone looked happy. Even my empty chair had been removed from the table. They hadn't even saved me a place. That hurt more than I could explain. I quietly turned my phone off and buried my face in the pillow. For the first time since I was a little girl, I cried without trying to hide it. A soft knock interrupted my tears. "Good morning," a cheerful voice said. A nurse walked into my room carrying a small Christmas stocking. Her name tag read Sarah Collins. "I noticed you didn't have any visitors," she said gently, so the staff put together a little Christmas surprise. Inside the stocking was a candy cane, fuzzy socks, a handwritten Christmas card, and a tiny snowman ornament. They weren't expensive gifts, but they meant everything to me. "Thank you." I whispered, struggling to hold back tears. Sarah smiled. No one should feel alone on Christmas. After she left, another nurse came in with a warm cup of hot chocolate. Later that afternoon, an elderly volunteer stopped by my room with a small guitar. He played Silent Night for every patient on the floor. For a few minutes, the hospital didn't feel so lonely anymore. The kindness of complete strangers reminded me that compassion doesn't always come from family. Around 6 in the evening, my phone finally rang. My heart raced. "Mom!" I answered immediately. "Hi, Mom!" Before I could say anything else, she asked, "How are you feeling?" "I'm still here," I replied quietly. "Oh, that's good." Then I heard laughter in the background. Christmas music. Children opening presents. Someone shouted, "Dinner's ready!" Mom covered the phone for a second and laughed with everyone else. When she came back, she said, "We're about to eat, sweetheart. I just wanted to check on you." That was it. Less than 30 seconds. "No. Do you need anything?" "No. We're coming to see you." Just a quick phone call to make herself feel better. "Okay," I said softly. "Merry Christmas." "You too, honey." She hung up. I looked at the blank screen for a long time. Then I made myself a promise. If I walked out of that hospital, I would stop chasing people who never chose me. I would build a life where I was never anyone's second choice again. I didn't know it then, but that promise would change everything. 3 days later, the doctor finally walked into my room with a smile. "Good news, Ava," he said. "Your infection is responding well to treatment. You can go home today, but you need plenty of rest." I thanked him, packed my small bag, and walked out of the hospital alone. No one came to pick me up. I called my dad. No answer. I called my mom. Straight to voicemail. So I ordered a rideshare and watched the snowy streets pass by through the window. Christmas decorations were still glowing, but they didn't make me smile anymore. When I reached home, I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The living room looked like a department store after a holiday sale. Wrapping paper covered the floor. Half-empty plates sat on the coffee table. My brother Ethan was showing off his brand new gaming console. My parents looked up as if I had just returned from a normal day at work. "Oh, you're home?" my mom said casually. No hug, no tears, no apology. Dad glanced at me and said, "The doctor discharged you already?" I nodded. "I had to come home by myself." He shrugged. "We figured you could manage." Those 5 words cut deeper than they realized. I quietly carried my bag upstairs. As I walked past the Christmas tree, I noticed gifts with everyone's names. Mom, Dad, Ethan, even our dog had a present. There wasn't a single gift with my name on it. Not one. I stood there for a moment, staring at the tree I'd helped decorate every Christmas since I was a little girl. It felt like I had become a stranger in my own home. That night, I lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. The hospital, the empty room, the social media photos, the forgotten Christmas gift. For years, I had kept making excuses for my family, but I couldn't anymore. The next morning, I opened my laptop and started applying for nursing jobs across the country. A week later, I received an email that changed my life. A hospital in Seattle, Washington offered me a full-time position with excellent pay, benefits, and career growth. I stared at the screen for several minutes. Seattle was over 1,000 miles away. Leaving meant starting over. It also meant leaving behind the people who had broken my heart. For the first time in years, the decision felt easy. I accepted the offer. When I told my parents I was moving, my mom frowned. "Seattle? That's so far away." Dad looked confused. "Why would you leave your family?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "The night you left me alone in the hospital? You already answered that question." The room fell silent. Neither of them knew what to say. 2 weeks later, I loaded everything I owned into my car. Before driving away, I looked at the house one last time. I wasn't leaving because I hated them. I was leaving because I finally loved myself enough to stop begging for the love they never gave me. As I drove toward my new life, I had no idea that one day, the same people who left me behind would come knocking on my door, asking for the one thing they had never given me: a second chance. Seattle didn't welcome me with sunshine. It welcomed me with cold rain, long shifts, and a city where I didn't know a single person. But somehow, it still felt more like home than the house I'd grown up in. I threw myself into my new job at Evergreen Medical Center. Every patient reminded me of the Christmas I had spent alone. So I made myself one promise: no patient under my care would ever feel abandoned if I could help it. Sometimes, after my shift ended, I stayed an extra hour just to sit with elderly patients who had no visitors. I listened to their stories, held their hands, celebrated their birthdays with them. One evening, an elderly woman named Margaret smiled at me and said, "You're not just a nurse, Ava. You're someone's answered prayer." I had to turn away so she wouldn't see the tears in my eyes. No one in my own family had ever spoken to me like that. Months turned into years. I was promoted to charge nurse. My salary nearly doubled. I rented a beautiful apartment overlooking the Seattle waterfront. For the first time in my life, I bought furniture that was truly mine. I even adopted a golden retriever puppy. I named him Hope. Every morning, Hope greeted me at the door with a wagging tail. It was a simple thing, but it felt like more love than I'd received at home in years. Meanwhile, my parents barely called. Sometimes weeks passed without a single message. When they did call, it was always the same. "How's work? When are you coming home? Your brother misses you." Not once did they say, "We're sorry for leaving you alone in the hospital." Not once. Eventually, I stopped expecting an apology. I had accepted that some people never admit the pain they cause. Then, 3 years after that Christmas, my phone rang late one evening. The caller ID read, "Mom." Something felt different. I answered. Her voice was shaking. "Ava, I don't know who else to call." Before I could respond, she started crying. My heart sank. I had never heard my mother cry like that before. "Dad lost his job," she whispered. "We're months behind on the mortgage. And Ethan?" She paused, trying to catch her breath. "Ethan was in a car accident. The insurance won't cover everything. We're drowning in debt." I closed my eyes. The room became completely silent. 3 years earlier, I had begged them to stay with me for one night. Now, they were calling me because they needed help. And for the first time in my life, the decision wasn't as easy as they probably expected. Stood in my apartment, holding the phone in silence. On the other end, I could hear my mother crying. For a moment, I closed my eyes, and I was back in that hospital room. The beeping machines, the snow falling outside, my parents walking away because Christmas dinner mattered more than their daughter. That memory still hurt. "Ava," my mom whispered, "please say something." I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry that Dad lost his job. I'm sorry Ethan was hurt. I truly hope he recovers." There was a long pause. Then she asked the question I already knew was coming. "We need financial help." My heart sank. Not because they asked, but because it confirmed what I had feared. After 3 years, the first time they truly needed me was when they needed money. My mother continued, "We could lose the house. Your father is trying to find work. The hospital bills are overwhelming. We don't know what to do." I looked around my apartment. Everything I owned, I had earned. Every paycheck, every promotion, every late-night shift. No one had handed me this life, especially not my family. Finally, I spoke. "Mom, do you remember Christmas?" She didn't answer. "The Christmas when I was lying in a hospital bed and you left me there." Silence. I continued. "I begged you to stay. You said Christmas dinner was more important. You promised to visit the next day. You never did." I heard quiet sobbing on the phone. For the first time, my mother didn't make excuses. Instead, she whispered, "I think about that day every single Christmas. I've regretted it ever since." Before I could respond, my father took the phone. His voice sounded older, weaker. "Ava, I owe you an apology. I failed you as your father. I chose convenience over my daughter. I can't change what I did, but if I could go back, I would never leave that hospital." Those words hit me harder than I expected. It was the apology I had waited years to hear, not because it erased the pain, but because it was finally honest. Then Dad quietly said, "We're not asking you to forget. We're only asking if you'll give us one chance to make things right." I looked out the window. Rain tapped softly against the glass. For years, I had dreamed about this moment. I imagined telling them no. I imagined hanging up, making them feel the same loneliness I had felt. But revenge suddenly didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. Because healing isn't always about making someone suffer. Sometimes, it's about refusing to become the person who hurt you. I took a slow breath. Then I said, "I'll come home. But not because you need my money. I'm coming because I need to know whether this family can finally tell each other the truth." On the other end of the phone, no one spoke, only quiet tears. And for the first time in years, it felt like maybe, just maybe, the healing could finally begin. 2 days later, I boarded a flight to Denver. As the plane landed, my heart felt heavier with every passing minute. I wasn't returning home because everything was fixed. I was returning to face the memories I had spent 3 years trying to forget. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I barely recognized the house. The Christmas lights were gone, the paint was peeling, the front yard was overgrown. It looked as tired as the people living inside it. I knocked on the door. A few seconds later, my mother opened it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she burst into tears. Without asking permission, she wrapped her arms around me. "I'm so sorry, Ava," she cried. "I should have been there. I should have never left you alone." This time, I didn't pull away, but I didn't hug her back immediately either. Some wounds need more than words to heal. Inside the house, my father stood quietly in the living room. The confident man I remembered was gone. His shoulders were slumped. His hair had turned noticeably gray. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm ashamed of myself," he said. "I spent years believing I was a good father. But a good father doesn't leave his daughter alone in a hospital on Christmas. I failed you." For the first time in my life, my father admitted the truth without making excuses. A few minutes later, my younger brother Ethan slowly walked into the room using a cane. His accident had left him with a badly injured leg. He looked at me with guilt written all over his face. "I owe you an apology too," he said quietly. "I knew Mom and Dad treated me differently. I enjoyed the attention. I never stood up for you. I should have." Tears rolled down his face. I was selfish. I looked at all three of them. For years, I had imagined this moment. I thought hearing these apologies would erase my pain, but they didn't. Some scars never completely disappear. They simply stop controlling your life. That evening, we sat around the same dining table where I once had no place. This time, there was a chair waiting for me. No one touched the food. Instead, we talked. Really talked. For hours. We cried. We admitted painful truths. We remembered Mom's old Christmas traditions before everything changed. For the first time in years, we acted like a family instead of strangers living in the same house. Then my father looked at me. "Ava," he said softly, "we'll understand if you never forgive us. But thank you for giving us one chance to become the family we should have been." I looked around the table. I couldn't change the Christmas they stole from me, but I could decide what happened next. And that decision would change all of our lives forever. A year passed. Christmas came again. For weeks, I wondered if I should even go home. The memories of that hospital room still lived inside me. Some nights, I could still hear the steady beep of the heart monitor. Some scars don't disappear. They simply become quieter. A few days before Christmas, my phone rang. It was my dad. "Ava," he said, "we're having Christmas dinner this year, but it won't start until you walk through that front door." I smiled, but I didn't answer right away. He continued, "We spent years making you feel like you came second. Never again." On Christmas Eve, I flew to Denver. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something different. The house looked warm again. The lights were glowing. The front porch was decorated just like it had been when I was a little girl. When I opened the door, everyone was waiting. Not around the dining table, not opening gifts. They were standing in the hallway, looking at me. My mom walked over first and hugged me tightly. "We've been waiting for you." My dad smiled. "No one eats until our whole family is together." Then Ethan laughed. "And this year, your chair was the first one we set." I looked toward the dining room. There it was, a seat with my name on it, right in the center of the table. 3 years earlier, there hadn't even been a place for me. Now, the entire dinner had been planned around my arrival. I couldn't hold back my tears. That night, we talked, laughed, and shared stories until late in the evening. For the first time in many years, Christmas didn't hurt. Before dessert, Dad stood up holding a small wrapped box. "This isn't a Christmas gift," he said. "It's an apology we'll spend the rest of our lives proving." Inside the box was a silver bracelet. Engraved on the inside were 6 simple words: "You will never be left behind." I ran my fingers over the engraving. No expensive gift could erase the past, but this wasn't about the bracelet. It was about the promise behind it. As the evening came to an end, we stepped outside. Snowflakes drifted gently through the cold night air. I looked at my family standing beside me. We weren't perfect. We never would be. But we were finally honest. And sometimes, honesty is where healing begins. Looking back, people often ask me if I regret helping the family who abandoned me. My answer is always the same. Forgiveness didn't erase what they did. It simply freed me from carrying the weight of it every single day. The Christmas they left me alone in a hospital changed my life forever. But it didn't define my future. Instead, it taught me to choose kindness without accepting disrespect, to love others without forgetting my own worth, and to remember that real family isn't measured by blood, it's measured by the people who choose to stand beside you when you need them most. So if you've ever felt forgotten, if you've ever wondered whether you were enough, please hear this. Someone else's failure to love you does not determine your value. Never stop believing in yourself, because one day, the people who overlooked you may finally understand what they lost. And when that day comes, let your greatest victory be not revenge, but the beautiful life you built without them.